Welcome to the True Calling Project. I'm John Harrison, professional psychotherapist. What if how we live our lives is so important that it can literally change the world? Knowing that instead of being a small cog in the machine, we actually have the capability to have real impact just by being what we are. Interviews, stories, and insights with people who are living to their full potential. Do we all have a true calling? Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 35. I've got a guest on today, Michele Meiche. She is a coach and a psychic intuitive out of the Los Angeles area. And Michele and I had done some coaching work together, her being the coach, me being the coachee, about a year ago. And I was really profoundly affected by her work, and here's why. She is a psychic intuitive, but she is a grounded intuitive, and that was exactly what I needed, I think, at the time to kind of get myself out of my stuck mindset and my patterns, but also still be realistic, but also understand there's a lot of things going on in the world and the universe that I just don't understand. And I wanted to bring her on particularly because Michele's the kind of person, she's got one foot on the ground and she's got one foot in the spiritual realm. And we're going to get into what intuition is, what it looks like, what keeps us from accessing it, what blocks us from tapping into that part of ourselves that knows better. It knows the right way. It knows the right path. Michele is she's a wonderful individual. She's an awesome coach. She also has a podcast that she's going to talk about that she's been doing for a few years. And her business, her website, her message is really taken off here. At least I think I've noticed since in the couple of years that I've been following her. Without further ado, here's episode 35 with Michele Meiche. Thanks so much for this.
It's great to be here.
The current energy that we're feeling collectively as a society, or maybe even as the world, what happened with the election last fall, and a lot of angst and tension. And then there's also this kind of maybe new awareness of what people term as the shift. And I even feel like there's more and more people getting curious about things like what the planets are doing, or what the stars are doing, or what their birth sign is, or all those things are kind of coming into play. And I think a lot of that has to do with people wanting to tune more into their intuition.
Well, first of all, the shift, to put it in the most simplest terms, what we're all co-creating in this new paradigm, which is, of course, paradigm being a system of thought and also a new way of living and being. The shift is really about coming more from intuition, or I would say the expanded aspect of our being, which I would call the higher self. I like to look at the higher self as the mediating aspect of us between, if you want to say, the universe, God, the all that is. And previously in the old paradigm, we relied heavily on logic and analyzing. And we are also more so based, and especially because there was a psychological function of the ego, as having us feel safe and keeping the status quo. My understanding is that at some point, believe it or not, we won't even have what we know now as an ego, because we will move out of the idea of being separate. And so we'll move into the idea of being that we're separated out as soul beings, separated out, but that we're all from the same source. We're all interconnected. If I do well and you do well, then it's good. If I think about doing actions that are not just good for me, but good for family, friends, and everyone concerned, as much as possible. When you have that kind of living, there will be less fear, and there'll be more transparency, there'll be more honesty, there'll be more trust. So you won't have to have the defense mechanisms that we do have now. So we're really in an experiment now of, how do we all get along, right? And, a lot of experts in, neurologists, people that study brain functioning, they talk now about neuroplasticity, that the brain can grow and that it does change. Or that, if you have an event happen, a major event in your life, especially a trauma, that it rewires the brain so that you are acting and responding differently due to what's happened to you. So in a way, we're all getting this shift or realignment. And it doesn't mean we won't have teachers or therapists or helpers. That will always be there. But it does mean that our first or primary function will now be more the intuition. That will be the first function. And the secondary will be the analyzing or the thinking or making it into a system of thought. So it's really the shift. I mean, on a simplistic level, there is a shift where we're going to be using what they call the parts of the brain that we don't use, that we haven't used, parts of the DNA encoding or structure that will just be, opening. And in saying that, John, what it requires is people to learn how to not overreact and to move into more of a meditative state. Mindfulness is one way to start, and meditation. But there is a waiting. And I always say spirit acts either in a holy instant, so very quickly, or 11th hour. The next step, once people master listening to their intuition, you actually start becoming more psychic or connected to your soul, so that you're then making decisions that are most life-enhancing for you and most aligned to your soul, and therefore most aligned to the best decisions for health, optimal health, wellness, mental, emotional health, spiritual connection, everything that is authentic to you when you're coming from that soul level. We're in a crisis point right now where there's a fever pitch of people seeing, I would say, the lower harmonic of the ego. It's like when something is dying, it first rallies. Earlier you mentioned about what's going on in the world. That's part of it. There's a lot of fear because people are still trying to control things, so it is the last ditch effort of letting go. It's an egoic death, or transformation, really. I don't know if I can say it was a death per se.
When you say intuition, I feel like, at least for me personally, that when I get better at tuning into it, I realize it's always been there. I just haven't been paying attention to it. But do you think that what trips up a lot of people is that they're looking for the concept of what they think being intuitive is?
Yes, I think that's a part of it. And I think that unfortunately, due to the wounded family and group dynamics that we've had, the woundedness, we're taught not to listen to that part of us. And it starts very early with children when they feel a vibe about something or someone, and they're told, oh, be nice to them. Oh, no, they're nice. They're fine. And then later you find out they weren't so nice. And you see this with children and animal beings, especially dogs. I see this all the time when I'm walking my little dog, Yoshi, will actually go away from a dog that is unstable, and then later we walk across the street and that dog is barking at another dog and the owner's trying to, reel them in. And so I feel that instinctual awareness, it gets socialized out of us at an early age. Everyone is intuitive. That's the reason it is the sixth sense. You're born with an instinctual awareness. We're born with a body awareness that literally, if you listen, it'll tell you, don't eat that. And people all the time tell me, oh God, I knew that. I felt that. I felt I shouldn't have ate that, or I felt this was going to happen, or I just knew. So it could be those kinds of things to some of the more obvious where I just knew they were going to call, or I was thinking of them and then I bumped into them at the grocery store, the market, or they called me or they emailed me or texted me, whatever. The biggest thing, though, is we don't listen to that part or trust it. And one of the things people can do to more listen to that, there was a wonderful guest on my podcast, Awakenings with Michele Meiche, that Susie Lula, and she said, if you listen to the first voice, it's the voice underneath. And even me as an intuitive and a psychic channel, psychic medium, I will sometimes I'm attuned to more listen to it, but I started playing around that and I said, God, there is sometimes where there's this overriding voice that says, oh no, go do that. That'll save you time. But then there's another voice. Now I'm more trained to listen to the voice underneath. But even I have that voice, and it is the voice of the mainstream consciousness. It's the beta voice. It's the voice of reason that's coming more from the ego of, think of your ego, a lot of times you can look at it as a computer. It has whatever you programmed it to have. And so many ways, a part of our healing and transformation and empowerment and relearning or becoming more spiritually integrated or connecting more to our soul is first and foremost, for the most part, for a long time, it's going to be retraining the ego to be more receptive.
I think for me, one of the things that helps is that I try to make sure that, is the voice coming from a place of fear or lack, or is it coming from a place of more of a groundedness, or it feels right? When I'm working with clients, sometimes I'll be able to pick out and help them pick out where they might be making decisions based on fear. So one of the common ones is, if you've got you have your own business, it can be very common to not want to turn away business, even though that you're running yourself ragged and you're physically and mentally overwhelmed and exhausted. But the mind comes in and says, well, don't turn down business because you may not get more. And
right.
The intuition might be being overlooked because the body's speaking and it's saying, I need rest. I need to get away and recuperate.
Yeah. Now, that's good. One thing, though, is you have to be mindful. I feel people have that since fear is a natural human emotion, sometimes your higher self will speak through fear to get you to listen or stop or wake up.
Right.
So I always say sometimes fear means stop, wait, more facts are needed, or it could be a big no, or it could be you're undermining yourself due to fear. But this is where I feel people getting to know themselves and understand themselves more will learn sometimes fear. And I'll give you an example to this. I have a couple examples, but one that really stands out was during 9/11. I was supposed to be traveling. And right on that date, I think it was the 11th through like the 15th or something. And 2 weeks before, I started having these fear dreams, terror dreams of planes blowing up and me being sucked out of the plane. And I was like, whoa, it was very disturbing. I mean, nightmare. And I was like, I told some people, I've been told a mentor I was working with this, oh, you've under a lot of stress. I'm no. Or maybe you have a fear of flying. No, I love flying and I actually like turbulence. So, but what it did is it got me to wait. And I trust my higher self enough. And I thought, you know what, I'm just not going to book anything. I don't know exactly what this means, but I'm just not going to book the flight. And of course, 9/11 happened, and I would have been right in the middle of that. So again, it's like it's learning the signs and signals. Your body not only is our body this amazing instrument. It's like a big tuning fork. You're getting these messages, like radio waves, if you will, sonar wavelengths, vibrational frequencies. It's like a tuning into a radio. So there's that, and then again, what helps is that you've got to step back and get into a neutral space and see where is this coming from, because sometimes fear does mean don't do it.
Yeah. Do you think the body is our first indicator?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Because as energy beings, vibratory beings, everything starts from tone. We first feel those frequencies, and that's the thing that's what messes people up is they're not healed enough emotionally, because what's emotions? Energy and motion. It's all energy, right? The body is giving you the message before you get it cognitively, before you get the flash of insight. And that brings something too that I really want your listeners to understand is not everything that doesn't feel quote unquote nice or right or good is necessarily wrong or bad for us or means we're on the wrong path. It means you're learning something or you're working through something. And so there is going to be more perhaps dissonance and less resonance or coherence or harmony. There's going to be some disharmony. That's also how we stretch and learn and grow. What I can say, though, is chronically what you want to do is watch and tune in and be honest with yourself and say, okay, does this situation keep coming up, and I have the same responses and the same result? Or does this situation not changing enough to be more life-enhancing? I would say change your behavior first, change yourself. If you change and you get to a neutral place and either those around you or the situation hasn't met you in that place, then that's where your intuition or your inner guidance comes in to say, you know what? It's no longer productive. It's no longer life enhancing. you'll start feeling that your body is actually moving you in a new direction. And that is your intuition.
I think from a personal perspective, like I would say that in the past, I would probably more resign to the fear. And I would say, oh, if it feels like there's fear there, I don't want to do it. And a lot of people can attest to that as well. But what I've been paying attention to more this past several years of my life is that underlying that, there's an excitement and a wonder kind of mentality. Like, so what's that? Because the fear is there and it doesn't feel good and it feels like I'm going to throw up. But, is there something else underneath that I should be stepping with and through to get to somewhere different? Yeah.
One of my teachers and mentors one time told me, because I was mentioning something similar to what you're saying about feeling fear, and I thought, I'm afraid of that. And he said, what if your fear is really excitement?
Right.
I said, oh, and I thought, yeah, because again, the socialization process, if you think about it, when those kinds of feelings come up, or anxiety about something, or what we might term, sometimes it's interpreted as that, especially as well-meaning parents will say, well, you're just afraid of that, or you're afraid of something new. But imagine if we changed the language and said, maybe you're excited. Maybe those things in the stomach, those butterflies, or you're kind of excited that something new is happening. So yeah, that's a good point that you brought up, that underneath there could be excitement.
It's challenging for people. I think they don't know which way to go. Do I go towards the thing that's new and exciting, and is that going to bring me what I want? And if I can't see those results given to me beforehand, should I even act? And then I'm getting into analysis by paralysis and freezing. Yes. And I'd mentioned to you before we started the show today is, you helped me move past a stuck point that I had, and it opened up a whole different reality for me. And I didn't even know I was doing it. I was making a choice based on what if you asked me, is that your intuition? I would said, yeah, sure, because this is what I feel like I need to be doing. And in essence, it was leading me astray. And I was wondering more, like, that was probably my stubbornness in many ways, which is ego-driven, than it was my actual intuition.
Yes, and that's why I always say we'll need people. We will always have blind spots because we're always expanding and growing. So to me, whether it's a mentor, a teacher, therapist, or good friend, sometimes we don't see something. So I feel people, whether friends or family members, children, I've worked with parents that their kids know how to do this, and they'll catch the parents and with joking and go, I don't know, Mom, is that really what you want to do? Or Dad, I don't know. Haven't you done that before? Or, don't you want to grow? Don't you? And that's why I always ask for confirmation. If you're making the right decision for you, or most life-enhancing decision, even if there's some fear there, you will literally feel your heart lighten up and your shoulders will go back a bit. Basically, you'll feel more open. They'll be more expansive with what you want to do. And also, I would say for people, listen to yourself talk. And when you're talking things over with people, have them listen. If your voice is getting more animated, that means more life energy is coming through.
You do a lot of coaching, correct?
Yes.
Still?
Yes.
How often do you see clients who are looking for, let's say, leaving something, whether it's a relationship, which I'm sure you get a lot of, or jobs, and how do you help them use their intuition to potentially either make a leap to another relationship or get out of one, or to a job, or to stay where they are and do the work? Like, how do you help them with that?
Well, first of all, if it's a reoccurring pattern that they tend to have in their personal relationships or work relationships, I ask them honestly, do you want to repeat this or want to learn this now while you're working with me? Let's just be honest. So,
right.
And most of them choose to do that because they realize. And what I would share with everyone is that I would have people write out what they don't like, what they're experiencing, what the block seems to be, or the power struggle, or whatever's going on, what's not fulfilling, and really look at that, and then write out what they want to attract, what kind of situation, and then to see how are they contributing to that. I actually have something on my website on soulplayground.life, projection perception. That's a wonderful tool that people can just copy and paste, and that really helps. So because we can't hear our intuition when we're caught in a projection. You have to move into perception. So I do it now in my head. I can tell when I'm projecting, and I'll go back to, okay, what's the earliest situation that this occurred, and what's going on. That's where your intuition comes in. But the intuition can't come in when we're emotionally charged. When we're in a traumatic situation, we're not going to see clearly. So you have to, handle the inner child, do the care and the kindness with that part, and then begin to write out what it is that you want to experience. What do you envision the situation that you want to be in? And also pull back a bit emotionally and realize, okay, this situation is not, healthy. See, the thing is, once you shift, you're out of the situation anyway. So I even tell people, look, it's all about consciousness. So when you shift, you're in a neutral place, then you can see that it is that person's issue or that boss's issue or situation or that coworker's situation. Once you remove yourself, one of the first things to do is to really focus on what is the reality, the isness of the situation, what is really going on. See, we try to take it personally and we try to fix it. So that's what causes us to get in this negative loop, this vortex with people. If you've got a coworker that runs hot or cold or is angry a lot and sometimes takes it out on you, it's not about you. That's what people have to see. It's not about you. It is about you if you insert yourself in that situation, and you can always trace it back to family experiences with primary caregivers. But once you see that it's not about you and you don't engage, you don't take it personally, you don't get in the loop anymore, you literally change mentally, emotionally. Your vibrational frequency changes. And so you're not caught in there. So one or two things happens at that. Either the people around you shift because you're not feeding into anymore. So by you shifting, they shift. Or you shift enough that you now can attract or get a different type of job situation where you're not having to play that out. Then you're going to be able to hear your intuition guiding you as to what to say or not to say or what to do or not do, the right action, we call it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've also known a lot of people who say, I'm perfect with my intuition. And in fact, I go off my gut too much and I don't use my head. And those type of people, I'll kind of paint a picture of them as they leave relationships rather easily or jobs rather easily. Do you know that type of person that has a hard time like putting the brakes on?
And that is important. This is exactly what we're talking about, John. These are people that have not done the deep inner work. So their wounded ego or wounded inner child is masquerading as intuition. And it's a way just to back up their non-life enhancing or healthy decisions. Put it this way, we can create something from the higher self or intuitive part of our being, or the wounded part of it. It doesn't matter. We're creator beings as human beings anyway. As spiritual beings, we're creating all the time.
This is really cool. And at the same time, I can see where it's almost maddening because you're right. There's so many things going on inside of us internally. And it's like, where do we turn? Where are we looking at? And I like what you said earlier about the body. I think that's become more in tune with our self as a whole. We are going to have to tune into the body. We are going to have to pay attention to what's going on internally instead of just looking out to see, are my actions creating the results that I want, or is this person doing what I want them to do? And it's a whole different way of thinking. And I guess that would fall back into the ego mindset that you mentioned, moving from ego to more of a higher self or intuition.
Yes. And again, I think another tip for people to integrate if they'd like to is just to allow yourself the time. We really don't ever have to make snap decisions. Okay, maybe a car's coming at us and we got to jump back on the curb, those kinds of things. But if we look at most of the decisions we make in our life, we do have the time to integrate things like, meditation or mindfulness or journaling, pros and cons, getting it out of the head, again, getting it out of, letting ourselves do the analyzing, and then do something like, breath work, breathing in, and then just saying, okay, give me a sign, because we're not talking to anything outside of us. This is what people have to realize. You're talking to yourself, that part that's guiding and directing you anyway, if you allow it, and just say, guide me or show me what I need to do. I'm going to, and just wait. Trust. You'll get a feeling, you'll get a flash of insight, you'll get some type of message. There will be something, whether it comes from internally within you or from within you through another person. And again, I ask for confirmations. I know, because sometimes it can be diluted. So I'll ask, okay, give me 3 confirmations, or give me the answer in 3 different ways, or I want to dream about this. I mean, you can get really kind of fun and playful. You can get fancy with it. You can say, oh, I want somebody actually to, say exactly what I said, or confirm it in this way, or I want a dream, or I want a book to open to a page. And the more you do it, it's just like any relationship. It gets stronger and stronger, and it works more. So the relationship to your intuitive self is just like any relationship. You have to take the time to engage it. There has to be consistency there. If there's not consistency, you won't be able to trust it. And you have to test it a little. We all test relation. Oh, they showed up for me. I would suggest to people that you keep a journal, and then either a separate journal or within that journal, have the space, what I call an intuition journal, that when you listen to your intuition and you listened in correctly, jot that down. Keep track of, oh, I listened and this happened, or this message came through and this is the way that it came about or that it manifested. I learned something by one of my clients that is amazing financial brain bag, stockbroker, trader, and does a lot with contracts. And of course, huge contracts, lots of money involved. But one thing that she shared with me, and she said, never do a contract with someone you don't trust. And if you have that sick feeling in your stomach, because she said, no matter how good a contract is, if you have really good lawyers, they can always get out of it. And so I always listen to that, because sometimes, I work with people that are, entertainment, they're doing a lot of contracts, and they all said, it was too good to be true, or I felt something, it wasn't quite working out, wasn't quite clicking. It was so much work, or I had a funny feeling in my stomach about it, but we had a contract, so again, we're all going to make mistakes. That's, part of one of the ways that we learn. But again, wait. More facts are needed. If you have that ill feeling or ill-ease feeling, and you'll see your intuition then will be backed by reality, or, it playing out in the kind of quote unquote real world, if you give yourself the time to let it play out.
Yeah. It's okay to slow down sometimes and just let it unfold. I really like that. This has been a really fun conversation, and I've learned, and I've been following you for a while, but I've learned so much just talking with you today.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, it's been great. And I know that you have a podcast that's weekly, but can you tell the listeners a little bit more about your podcast, and then also where they might be able to find you and your website?
Yes, it's Awakenings with Michele Meiche, and it's live every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time. And I do a talk, and usually people email questions or topic suggestions, and I'll call them together. Or based on what I see with clients or around the world, I'll do a talk and a sharing and a psychic channeling and tuning in. And then we have callers call in. But if you can't make it live, you can get the archives on iTunes as well. And it's based on spirituality, metaphysics, transpersonal psychology or therapy, mindfulness meditation, all of that, really, the whole self-help, empowerment, spirituality, and soul-centered path. And we talk a lot about awakening. What's the awakening, and how to become more awake and live more awake, and use your intuition. And then if people would like more resources, I've got a wonderful link on my website, soulplayground.com or soulplayground.life, where I have soul support tools, and my blog is there as well, and some interesting things and some insights there if people would like to have more resources.
Let's stay in touch, and I need, I totally haven't done this yet. I haven't called your show or emailed yet while you guys have been live. I need to do that.
Yes, definitely. I love it. It's very uplifting, and we have a good time.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Thank you, John. This has been amazing. I really thank you for asking me on your podcast. I'm so happy for you doing this, and I'm just so happy and enjoy that I got to come and share some of my experience and insight. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, have a great day, and I'll talk with you soon, okay?
Okay, sounds great.
See ya.
Peace. Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. You can find more about this project and what I do at lifemadeconscious.com, and you can also find more True Calling Project content on Facebook and Instagram. Please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on iTunes, as it helps more people find the show. Also, take a moment to share the podcast if you think others can use it to benefit their own lives. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.